There's the pass to Leitner. Puts it up. Yes!
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Cameron Chronicles. I'm your host, Ranjan Jindal, joined by my co-host, Caleb Dudley. Caleb, how are you doing, man?
It's good. It's been a while. Good to be back.
Yeah, this is our final Cameron Chronicles of the season, right before the summer. We're here a couple days before summer break, so today we'll kind of we're not going to talk about the end of the season. We're not going to talk about what happened in San Antonio. We're just going to look ahead to the 2025-2026 season. There's been a lot of moves, and Duke's roster is not totally finalized, but a lot has happened, and so we'll recap that, look ahead to the season, and also look at the ACC and the national landscape. The transfer portal has been extremely busy and increasingly busy every year, so a lot to digest, and so we'll kind of take you guys through that and go through what you might see from some teams next year. First, this podcast is brought to you by Duke Stores. Support your favorite Duke team. Duke Stores is home to the only collection of merchandise brought to you straight from Duke University. Go to shop.duke.edu for all of your Duke merch before the school year ends. All right, so just as a quick recap of what has happened so far, you can see this all on our live tracker on our website at dukechronicle.com. But for Duke, the expected departures to the NBA were obviously Cooper Flagg, Con Knippel, Colin Malawach, and Tyrese Proctor declared as well. Stanley Borden was the only transfer out of the program, but Shelton Henderson, who was a commit for next year's class, decommitted and decided to commit to Miami after. He had a relationship with Jay Lucas, who, we know took the head coaching job at Miami. So wish all the best for Shelton as well. And then Caleb Foster and Isaiah Evans and kind of the rest of the team, Patrick Ngongbo, Malik Brown, everybody announced that they would be coming back. And then the one addition that John Shires made in the portal was Cedric Coward, the Washington State player who was injured for the majority of last season, but has entered his name in the NBA draft. He's still in the draft along with Isaiah Evans, but yeah, he announced his commitment for Duke for next year if he decides to return to college for another year of eligibility. So it's kind of a lot, but just kind of an overview, Caleb. What were some of your takeaways, big thoughts? What are you looking for next year with this group going forward?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that's 2 times in 3 years with Shire that there's been no scholarship player enter the portal. That's pretty unheard of nowadays in college basketball. Obviously you'd prefer to bring back the guys you already have, especially from a team that just went to the Final Four. So I think that's probably what led to Sheldon decommitting. I think, maybe just wasn't expecting all those guys to come back. And so just maybe, wanting to go play more at Miami, which is totally understandable, and, best of luck to him. But yeah, I think, having Caleb Foster back, there was times during the season where you thought maybe he would want to transfer. He had a diminished role, but there at the end of the season, he really came on strong again, was a big contributor. So I think they're ready for him to kind of step back up into the point guard role, along with Caden Boozer, who's coming in as a freshman. And then Isaiah Evans is the big one coming back. Rumors, teams want him to transfer, him going to the draft, which he is still in the draft, but indications are he'll be back. He announced, on Twitter or X that he'll be coming back. He's definitely a top NBA prospect for next year. Duke fans are certainly happy to have him back, and always fun to watch. Coward, you mentioned. I think, Duke needed a big time wing piece. Can't just be Isaiah Evans, Nick Kamini out there. And so they got Coward. He played 6 games at Washington State this past year after coming from Eastern Washington. He had a torn labrum in the middle of the season. But he averaged, 18 points a game at Washington State. He's a surefire NBA prospect, projected in the first round some places right now. So he's in the draft. Still testing the waters. He'll have to make a decision on whether he's going to come back or not. But if he does come back to Duke for next season, he's well-rounded wing. He's long, 7'2" wingspan, rebounds well, pushes the floor well, serviceable shooter. So definitely gives Duke, kind of helps round out that starting lineup for Duke next year.
Yeah, we'll talk about Kyra for a bit. I think from watching him a little bit, obviously the first thing that jumps out is his wingspan, like you mentioned, and he can score at all 3 levels. He's even posted up a little bit. He probably is not going to do that too much, but with his long wingspan, he can kind of shoot over a lot of guards that match up onto him. And if he's playing on the wing with a couple bigger players, he can rise up over anyone. He has a high release on his jump shot. He shot 40% from 3 in limited games last year, which is obviously a welcome sign, but even when he did play big seasons, he's up in the high 30s for 3-point shooting. So that is obviously incredible. The one thing I'm going to be watching for him is, like, obviously with somebody who has such a big wingspan and can dribble the ball, just limiting those turnovers. He's not somebody who turns the ball over a super high amount, but coming into this level of competition, there's going to be a lot of people swiping down on him, a lot of little guards on him. So he's going to have to be smart with his dribbling and passing. He also has great vision from what I've seen and always looks to find the open man. And the assist to turnover ratio for Duke was so good last year. So I think he can contribute to that as long as he keeps that down. And the ability for him to just attack the glass is fun. And I think he'll provide a new highlight reel maybe every game and can provide some excitement to this team, which will be fun.
Yeah, and another thing to add there, it's a pretty cool story if you don't know. Coward started out at D3, and so now for his last year, he's made it all the way up to Duke or the NBA draft as a pick, which is pretty impressive. He's like you said, I think he has Duke is going to want to kind of keep that same defensive intensity they had last year.
Mm-hmm.
He definitely helps there with that wingspan on the wing. I think he'll probably be maybe second, third leading scorer on the team if he comes back. I think it'll help. He didn't have the best supporting cast at Washington State, but
Right.
now better chance for him to space the floor, kind of get his own shots, get good looks. Hopefully he comes back healthy from his shoulder, and he's still working through that. But if he comes back, I think he'll definitely be a great glue guy and also just a really good piece.
Yeah, fun guy to watch. All right, we'll start in the backcourt and then we'll go to the front court, just kind of talking about this team next year. I forgot to mention the recruits as well. You mentioned the Boozer twins, Cameron and Caden Boozer, and then Nick Hemenia coming in. He'll be a good wing piece who can shoot the ball as well. But in the backcourt, we'll say Caleb's coming back. I think the biggest thing for him, it's going to be another developmental summer for him, and I think his shooting is obviously one thing that can constantly be improved, but also can he shoot off the dribble? Can he produce from deep at a serviceable enough level that he can space the floor? He's probably going to be in the backcourt with Isaiah Evans and Cedric Howard, two people who can shoot extremely well, so he doesn't need to be an elite shooter by any means. But I was really impressed with his ability, especially against Houston and in the ACC tournament, just to kind of steady the offense at times. It almost seemed like he was the point guard who was the most in charge. Like, Duke played a point guard by committee approach, but Caleb is a true point guard in that game and in that late stretch of the season. So I think the one thing for him to improve is just continue to work on that shot and continue to work on his defensive intensity. But he brings so much crafty finishing ability, toughness. He drives the ball well, and I think he'll be a great starting point guard, knowing that kind of this is his team and his role to fill. He's going to have that this year. And then Isaiah Evans also, we saw flashes of him last year just improve his defensive intensity throughout the year, and he got a few nice rebounds, and he, still had freshman moments on that end of the floor, and, his work ethic, John Shire has raved about, and I think that's going to be the summer thing for him is just, can he not get lost on that end, stay in his rotations? He's going to shoot the ball. His confidence is out of this world. And then also just driving the ball. He's going to pump fake a lot, I assume, because people now know he's a, elite shooter, and they're going to get out on him. And can he make the extra play, the extra pass or something if they close out on him? But those are two guys that I'm excited to watch next year, because I think I love seeing college guys develop, and I think both of them have had a positive trajectory in their college careers, and I'm excited to see them this summer.
Yeah, and then rounding out the backcourt, you've got Caden Boozer, who I mentioned earlier. He's another Shire type. He's a big point guard. He's 6'5", pure point guard. I think he led AAU in assist turnover ratio last year. Obviously, just him and his brother Cam just led their team to a national championship. Takes care of the ball really well. The shooting is improving. It's not, he's not an elite shooter, but it's serviceable. And then you got Darren Harris coming back as well.
Yes.
You talk about development. Obviously, the Blue Devils want to see him have an increased role. They're happy to have him back and not, transfer off somewhere else. Another, very capable shooter that gives Duke another weapon there on offense. So backcourt is, solid 4 deep.
Yeah, I forgot to mention Darren too. I'm excited to see Darren next year. I thought when he came in, it was cool to see him be confident in attacking the glass a lot. Or attacking the basket. That was cool. Cool to see him do, and he got to the line a few times. And I'm excited for his development. He's obviously a phenomenal shooter, and I think his just presence on the team is very positive. People rave about him, and Shire raves about him, and he's very patient, sticking to his roles, and does what he's told, which is great. And Boozer, he's a great finisher. He uses his body very well down low, and he knows how to score amongst the trees, which is obviously a skill that you'll need in college. And he has that chemistry already with his twin brother, which is obviously fantastic. shots are work in progress, like you mentioned, but he hit that game-winning shot to win the championship there. That was a tough one, but he's so good in that like 8 to 10 foot range, and can score some of those tough twos that people say are lost in basketball. But Caden can bring them back, and such a crafty finisher, like I mentioned. So excited to see that backcourt. He'll be a good, I think, developmental piece for Duke, and he'll grow hopefully over his time here. All right, let's go to the front court. I'll let you start because I know you're a front court guy. You love it. Obviously, Pat coming back after what he did, how he improved through the season will be great, and Malik Brown as well, and there's some others. So I'll let you take it away.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to go out and stake my claim here. I think Duke's going to have the best offensive front court in the country next year.
Ooh.
I'm on record here on this podcast talking about Patrick Gongba. I think, he can only get better with a full offseason as, the starting center. His touchdown low was just so good, and he was so good down the stretch. And you add Cam Boozer, who is just an absolute force down low. I don't understand how he's the fourth player in the country or whatever they say. He looks like a grown man out there. In the McDonald's All-American game in the Hoop Summit, he dominated down low. He gets whatever he wants. He's a good shooter. So I think those two, I mean, you kind of got finesse and then the absolute bruiser and boozer. And so I think, those two, and then you add in Malik Brown, who, I mean, is a great connector down low in addition to being a menace on defense. And you add Heminia, who kind of, has some of that point forward to him. He's a pass first wing, good shooter. So you have those four guys. I think they'll probably might look to add someone else on the wing or a backup center of some variety in the portal the rest of the way. But those guys, it's definitely a kind of got all the skills you need there to succeed.
Yeah, I'm excited for this front court, and I'll start with Brown. I want to see him be extremely aggressive on offense next year. There's going to be less offensive firepower on this team than there was last year. I mean, marginally so, not a ridiculous amount, but you're not going to have, Cooper Flagg and Con Knippel doing what they do. And I want to see Malik Brown have that game like he had in Cameron for Syracuse a couple of years ago where, he's just scoring from all three levels. He's getting offensive rebounds, which he's great at normally, and he was great last year. But you can see when he shoots the ball, the second UNC game, he made a couple, and he has a good stroke. And he has a good offensive bag, and he did his role last year. I'm not saying he didn't provide a good role on offense because he's such a great passer, but if he can just, be elite and aggressive on offense and continue to find his shot, I think that'll provide another dimension to Duke, especially with the role that he might play. I don't know whether he's going to, start or play off the bench or maybe do a little bit of both, switching with Ngongba, but I'm excited to see him play. And then Ngongba's fantastic. You kind of covered it well there, but he really impresses me with his touch, his hustle, his rebounding ability, and his ability to draw flagrant fouls on the opposing team.
He's the best in the country at
that. But as for the recruits, Nick Hemenia it's Hemenia for people who I saw this video, the pronunciation guide. So no, K is silent, although his first name does end in a K, so it kind of blends in anyway. But he's a fantastic shooter, and like you mentioned, pass first as well, and he can fit seamlessly into a roster, and I think his shot is just going to be fantastic for Duke on the front court, along with Boozer, and Cameron Boozer really has it all, and I'm excited to see him at a collegiate level, and especially with the chemistry he has with his brother, and and his scoring ability at all three levels will be fun to watch. So solid front court, and then the last thing I'm going to mention about this team moving forward, we just got news today. Actually, we're recording this Thursday, that Duke has filled the final spot on its head coaching roster. Well, I guess you can get how many coaches you want.
Yeah.
I meant replacing Jay Lucas. Empty spot. Right. With Evan Brads as an assistant coach. Obviously, I mentioned Jay Lucas departing to Miami, but Evan Brads has a player development background, but he was most recently been the assistant coach for the Jazz since 2022. He's also had experience as a video room coordinator for the Celtics, and then he, in his playing days, was an elite scorer for Belmont. I think he still leads there. He has a bunch of scoring records there. But a third-team All-American in 2016. So he's obviously has great experience in the playing rankings, and the NBA player development is obviously incredible. And I think he'll provide that at Duke as well, which is great. And he has that flip connection at Utah Jazz, which is interesting.
Yeah,
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've seen now it's a decent sample size that Shire's not afraid to go outside the brotherhood and hire coaches. When Coach K was here, it was mostly guys who played at Duke, come back, go out the bench. You've seen Jay Lucas, Dudley, and now Brad's all come in on the bench from somewhere else. Brad's comes, I'm sure, well recommended from Joe Mazzulla, Brad Stevens, and Will
Yeah,
Hardy,
yeah.
all who are close friends of John Shire. So I think, it's definitely not going to be a clashing of mentalities or ideologies, anything there. So I think he's well respected in the league. Bringing his home with NBA experience to help develop, guys who want to go to the NBA is a good move, and I'm excited to see how he meshes with the rest of the staff.
Yeah, definitely as well, and that should be fun. All right, anything for 2025 to 26? Like I mentioned, there's still a few roster spots open, so be tuned in the coming days. There probably will be some more announcements, and obviously, Coward's
Yeah.
decision will play a role as well. All right, anything else about this team?
No, that's it. Just watch. I think May 28th is the deadline. So Isaiah Evans and Coward both will need to announce by then. But yeah, so if they both come back, you got a good 9, 8, 9, 10 man rotation.
Yeah, and watch out for the draft as well. NBA draft, the lottery's in 11 days. Guys, Cooper Flag, Charlotte Hornet.
Mm-hmm.
Need the Hornets to win the draft lottery here. But yeah, anyway, that's then, and then the draft is June, late June at some point.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the exact day.
Yep.
But yeah, obviously Duke's going to very likely have the number one pick and probably 3 top, 10, 15 picks as well. So exciting time for the Brotherhood in that draft. And obviously hope, Tyrese gets a solid selection as well.
Yep.
All right, moving ahead to the schedule for next year, there's going to be, I saw there was a proposal to possibly decrease the ACC games down 2 to 18 next year to increase, the non-conference opportunities and strength of schedule things. I don't think there's been a decision officially on that. But if that is the case, that will affect a little bit of the strength of schedule. I will say, hopefully, though, the ACC as a whole is better, which I think it will be top to bottom than it was this year. So that'll improve the schedule naturally. But as far as non-conference, you have Arkansas in Chicago, Kansas in Madison Square Garden, Army on Veterans Day up at West Point, which will be fun, and Michigan. We heard recently that Duke's going to be playing Michigan and some familiar foes over there in the nation's capital in D.C. And then you obviously have the SEC ACC Challenge. You don't know who Duke's going to get in that. I don't know, maybe Alabama,
I was
Tennessee,
thinking Kentucky maybe, but
Kentucky.
too.
Yeah,
A return game from last year.
yeah. Anyway, so that's there. I don't know. What are you looking for in the schedule next year?
Yeah, I think it's a cool Army notwithstanding, which the Army thing's super cool. Obviously Veterans Day, Coach K's alma mater. It'll be cool to go up there and a rare game of a power conference going to a mid major, and so it'll be cool to go to West Point for the guys. And
Football
play.
teams always lose that game, so Duke better not.
Yeah, exactly. But then I think I think we've seen Shire has a model now where he wants to play these big non-conference games throughout the schedule, not just at the beginning. Kansas will probably be first week of the season like it always is at the Champions Classic, and then you'll have the SEC Challenge sometime that month too, and then Arkansas game is over Thanksgiving break. That'll be a big one with Coach Cal and Shire's hometown, and then Michigan's in February, just like the Illinois game this year. So just trying to let Duke be battle tested throughout the season and not have to depend on ACC that's up and down. So I think it'll be another fun schedule.
Also, there's rumors about a Michigan State game, right? At some point, I don't know.
Oh
if
yeah,
fruition,
that
but
too. So
maybe it's the year after.
yeah, I mean So there'll be no shortage of big games, on ESPN and 9 p.m. tip offs or whatever. So it'll be a good schedule. ACC should be up a little bit more up this year, which we'll talk about here soon. I think that'd be fun.
Yeah, let's talk about the ACC. There was, a lot in the portal, like I mentioned, a few coaching changes that were probably necessary, and I agree. I think the ACC top to bottom is going to be a lot better. One of the teams that might be one of the best teams in the country, not just the league, is Louisville. You bring in Isaac McNeely from Virginia. You have Ali Khalifa, who is the BYU transfer who sat last year, but he'll be back. And then Keishon Pryor, who's not a transfer, but he was injured. It was a pretty devastating injury for him at the beginning of last season, and he'll provide a size and toughness to that Louisville team. And then you add that on with the talent that they already have, and Louisville's like a solid team that might challenge Duke again for the top of the league and might be one of the better teams in the country. Javon Hadley and other players there. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like Louisville's going to be a tough.
No, yeah.
battle.
Anywhere you look now, you see Louisville, top 5 to start the year next year. It's been a crazy turnaround for Pat Kelsey there in 2 years from
Revival
from the Kenny Payne days. But yeah, I mean, you bring in the guys you just mentioned. Adrian Woolley from Kennesaw averaged almost 20 points a game last year. They have Michael Brown, 5-star guard, coming in as well from the high school ranks. So they're loaded. They're going to be able to score, at a high clip. And they'll definitely be, a tough. The game with Duke will be fun at some point in the season.
Yeah.
I'm sure it'll be highly contested, and probably the top two teams in the ACC all on paper.
Yeah, let's talk about the triangle a bit. Probably the biggest move in this area in basketball is Will Wade, the McNeese State coach, taking the job at NC State. Will Wade obviously coming off a big tournament win against Clemson in round one there, and then taking the job at NC State. He was rumored to go a number of places, but he's seemed to bring a lot of great energy to that program. His team plays phenomenal defense, and he also brought a couple players with him, including Quadir Copeland, who's familiar with the ACC. This team's gonna be solid next year, right? NC State. What are you looking at for this team?
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things nowadays. You get a new coach, you get a whole new team with it.
Yeah.
They got a whole new roster, pretty much, minus a few guys. Terrence Arsenault, who Duke's familiar with from Houston, comes in. You mentioned Quadir, who used to be at Syracuse. Jerry Dang from Florida State. Trey Holloman from Michigan State. Matthew Abel, who was a Miami commit that decommitted when Larry Nager resigned. So they got a whole bunch of guys now. They're pretty deep. It'll be a whole different look. And yeah, it'll be interesting. I think, the state fan base and is definitely fired up about Will Wade. He has a good track record, obviously at LSU and McNeese, and VCU as well. So I think it'll definitely be, some fun for a team who have been clamoring to get rid of Keats for a long time. And we'll see how it works out, but definitely a new look roster for them.
Final Four and then fired. Pretty tough, huh? No, yeah, that was
Yeah.
a rough year for him. Yeah, I agree. And then moving on to the other triangle team, North Carolina, you had a bunch of departures, to the portal. Elliot Cadeau went to Michigan, Ian Jackson to St. John's, and then obviously RJ Davis is out of eligibility. But you bring in size, seems to be the theme here. Obviously, North Carolina struggled with that, especially at the beginning of the year. They were, getting better later in the year when they went to that bigger lineup. But with Powell gone and you needed to replace some of that production in the center position. So they went out and got Henry Visar, who's a solid player for Arizona. He really stepped in towards the second half of the season for the Wildcats, and I think will be a solid center for North Carolina. And then also you got Jaron Stevenson from Alabama, who can shoot the ball from deep. He's more of a skinny, a big, but he's 6'10", 6'11", and can grab boards and can stretch the floor. And so I think they really developed well in size, and then, Caleb Wilson, obviously. But I do think one guy to watch for North Carolina is Jaden Young, who's a Virginia Tech transfer. He's a 6'4" guard who really came along in those last, 5 or 6 games for the Hokies. He had 27-point outbursts against Miami, and I was watching that overtime game against Syracuse. It was obviously a phenomenal game, but he scored 26 there, a couple of big shots down the stretch. And, he's a scorer, and he really scored more late. He could shoot the ball, but he shoots a lot. So can he shoot a high percentage for North Carolina next year? But he'll provide some instant scoring and inject some life into that offense after a lot of that backcourt has departed.
Yeah. I think, you mentioned it. New look front court. Van Allen Lubin's in the transfer portal. Jalen Washington's in the transfer portal as well, or transferred to Vanderbilt, not in the portal. And then, I think, North Carolina definitely wanted Drake Powell back. He's a, big-time NBA prospect, so it'll be interesting to see how they handle the wing without him. He was a pretty good stopper for them on the wing last year, so we'll see if any of these guys that they're bringing in can step up and kind of take that role.
I will say Van Allen Lubin probably intends to return to North Carolina, I think, but do we not know that?
Yeah, I think it's kind of up in the air, but we'll see.
Okay.
But yeah, even without him, they're obviously getting a new look front court,
Yeah.
even if he comes back,
Right.
with Visar and Stevenson. So
yeah. All right, talk us through some other ACC teams that you're looking at and teams that might surprise some people next year, maybe.
Yeah, I think two of the teams that most years you expect to be pretty good and were not last year were Miami and Virginia. I do think both of them will be back to relevancy next year. Miami will start with them. Jay Lucas, obviously, great recruiter, has that reputation from Duke and Kentucky before that. Obviously, Shelton Henderson goes there. That's a big time piece for Miami. Ernest Uday, also from Kansas State, comes to play center. Trey Donaldson from Michigan, from Auburn and Michigan, I guess nowadays. At Miami too, another experienced guard. And then Malik Renault from Indiana, another starter. So pretty much a whole new starting five at Miami. You got guys with a lot of length, versatility. Should be good. And then Virginia, same kind of deal, whole new roster. They went international for a center, Johan Grunlow. He's a projected draft pick for next year from Germany. Dallin Hall from Virginia.
BYU.
Oh,
Yeah.
Virginia, sorry. BYU, yeah. So elite shooter, good point guard, and then Devin Tillis from UC Irvine to fill out that backcourt. So with Brian Odom as the coach there now, replacing Tony Bennett, they should be back to relevancy in the ACC as well.
Yeah. Funny story there with Ryan Edom. That's cool. I agree, and I think when those two programs are playing better basketball, it's better for the league as a whole. I'll round it out with Clemson, who pretty much lost its whole roster to either graduation or the portal, or in Ian Shefflin's case, the Clemson football team. I don't know if that's actually going to happen, but if it does, man, Dabo's going to maybe love him. 6'8", 240, can play tight end. That'll be another weapon to the Tiger offense there with all the receivers they have. Cade Klubnik and Ian Shefflin might have some fun on the gridiron. Anyway, but Brad Brownell had absolutely reloaded in the portal, has one of the better portal classes in not only the league, I think, but maybe the country as well. The highlight is probably Nick Davidson from Nevada, who's a great shooter and scorer as well. But you also add size with Carter Welling, who is an absolute freak athlete. He can dunk the ball and he'll provide toughness inside and also some good shooting for Clemson. He's from Utah Valley. And then Dylan Hunter, who was the point guard for Clemson, who got hurt before the NCAA tournament, he'll be back leading the charge on offense there. But with the departures in the backcourt, it was important for Brownell to get a couple, and he did, with Justin Porter, who's a great shooter from Middle Tennessee, and then Butta Johnson from UAB, both quality shooters and depth to that guard room for Clemson. And so, after one of the better seasons in Clemson basketball history, I don't think the team's going to be as good, but could also challenge for the top of the league along with these teams that we mentioned. But yeah, should be a fun ACC, and I'm excited to see the schedule come out. It's always fun when you get the full ACC schedule. So yeah, a lot to look forward to for this conference. But now let's move on to kind of the big picture in the whole country. We mentioned the portal's just been insane everywhere all the time, and it's hard to keep up with. But I mentioned the North Carolina transfers could go to Michigan. That's one team that Duke is going to see next year. But looking at the country as a whole, what teams you think improved the most in the portal, or some that you're watching for, some big splashes that teams have made?
Yeah, I think I'll go with two teams. One is BYU. They brought in Rob Wright to play point guard from Baylor, and then obviously they have AJ DeBanza coming in, who's the number one recruit in the country. BYU is just, they seem to have unlimited NIL money. They're just throwing it around. They've got a good roster now, so they should be even better than they were last year. And then the other one is Kentucky. Kentucky last year, whole new team with Mark Pope. They've kind of done that again. They've done that again. Jalen Lowe is the big one there from Pitt. Denzel Aberdeen from Florida, and then Cam Williams from Tulane. So whole new roster there as well. Big portal class for them. And then, we mentioned earlier, you mentioned Cadeau. Yaxel Lindenberg might be the best player in the portal, also going to Michigan from UAB. Triple-double, watch every game with him. And then you mentioned Ian to St. John's as well, who's another big one. So, yeah, people going around all over. It's crazy stuff.
That's funny. I completely forgot that Jalen Lowe went to Kentucky. Yeah, Kentucky's going to be a team to watch. I agree. I think Mark Pope is going to really build that program, and they have more continuity than they had last year, but that's still, not saying much considering the whole roster was completely different.
Yep.
But his just ability to coach offensively is phenomenal, and they run great stuff, but can they improve on the defensive end is going to be the key for them to be not only, a great team, but an elite team. I'll mention a fun little story. The Stojakovic to Illinois really rounds out a bunch of, Eastern European heritage on that team.
Yep.
They're, a quality team. Obviously, Duke fans maybe have a little soured opinion of Illinois based on the performance that they had in Madison Square Garden last year. But nonetheless, you have Ben Homer-Krause, who just announced he's coming back. He's a solid point guard for that roster. And then I think the world of Stojakovic, I think he's a phenomenal scorer who really, was the number one option at Cal, but still nobody could really stop him, aside from a couple teams. And he plays at his own pace. He obviously has great genes for basketball, but he can shoot the ball, and he can score at all three levels, and he's a improving defender as well. So I think he'll provide instant offense to Illinois, and probably hopefully for them some 3-point shooting after what happened in that middle stretch of last season. But I think Brad Underwood is obviously a solid coach, and that's a team to watch as well, and a fun story in the portal. But yeah, people going everywhere this year.
Everywhere, yeah.
Good stuff. But yeah, again, another phenomenal basketball season on the horizon, even though we're kind of, it feels far away, but things move fast. The first bracketology is always already out, way too early stuff. But we'll be back post summer to talk about the rosters once they're finalized, give you some preseason previews, teams to watch in the ACC in the country, sleeper teams, all that good stuff, what we always do. And all of our content will be at Duke Chronicles. So over the summer, we'll be doing film rooms of all the new players coming in for the Blue Devils, and just some more preview content across the board for both Duke men's and women's. I will say for the women's team, a quick update. Nobody's been added onto the team from the portal, but they lost one of the leading scorers, Lucia Kanawa. She committed to Maryland. She's obviously a big loss for Kara Lawson's team, the way she was able to excel on defense and really came to her own offensively during the ACC tournament and NCAA tournament. So that's a big loss for the team, along with Vanessa De Jesus, who is the backup point guard for Duke. But nonetheless, Kara Lawson's team is going to be right up there with the top in the country. You have Riley Nelson, who sat out all of last season because of an injury. She's recovering from her ACL. And then bringing in Emily Skinner, who's a solid recruit who is flashy, but could score. And then don't forget Ari Robertson, who's a center who also sat out all of last year with a knee injury. So 2 instant pieces there to offense. But Ari Robertson was one of the best players in the class, and I think her and Toby Fournier will make an elite front court and maybe the best front court in the country, shall I say. Obviously, verdict's out on Robertson, how she plays at the collegiate level. But, Kara Lawson has improved her team's finish in every year that she's done so this season. And, I think there's another deep postseason run out for them.
Yeah, I mean, definitely a good roster again. And David mentioned Taina Mayer, Ashlyn Jackson.
Yeah.
So the team's pretty loaded. Delaney Thomas as well. So yeah, should be another good year. Skinner definitely is fun to watch. The All-American game, she made some pretty fun plays. She's a very highly touted point guard, so it'd be good for Duke to bring in someone who's comfortable with the ball and can initiate the offense. So yeah, should be another good year on the horizon for them.
Yeah, definitely. So we'll have film rooms of their new players as well. Check out our website for all your Duke sports coverage. Football coverage is coming up. Obviously, a lot of excitement with year 2 of Manny Diaz's era. But thank you guys so much for listening all season. We've really enjoyed doing this for another year. We'll be back later, like I mentioned, and we'll keep you informed and stay tuned. We really appreciate it. Have a fantastic summer. If you're a student, if you're not, either way, have a good summer. And yeah, we'll see you in the fall. For Caleb Dudley, I'm Ranjan Jindal. This has been the Cameron Chronicles.